So it's preparing. It says setting up your meeting. Still give me a loading bar, so I'll just start when we pop up.
Okay. Yeah, I've got the YouTube screen pulled up so that I can see the comments as they come through. Here's a good comment. Waiting on connection, like done on offense.
Here we go. All right, we are live on YouTube. Let me get my microphone in the right place. It's been a while since we've done this.
Yeah, I've got the YouTube.
We are live on the Pistols Firing podcast. Sorry for the delay. Sorry for the confusion here. I've been having to switch laptops because it's been a while. My camera wasn't working. So we are live. I'm Carson Cunningham. This is the Pistols Firing podcast, post Utah, post Oklahoma State. Joined as always by Colby Powell. Colby, how you doing on this Sunday? We were watching a little NFL. It was a lot better than the Utah Oklahoma State game.
Yeah, it's been a weekend. It's been a football weekend. I just want to verify that we are live on the YouTube. Are you sure that we're live? I've got it pulled up here. I'm not seeing us.
I'm seeing us live.
Are you? Okay. Somebody comment then and let us know if you can see us live. Maybe it's just on my screen. I don't have it pulled up correctly, but
Well, it's live on my end, but not.
just want to make sure we're live on the link so everybody can see us. I know we've got some people hanging out, waiting and ready to basically dive into everything that went on yesterday.
What's that now? Sorry.
Oh, we just got some people ready to dive into whatever that was we witnessed in Stillwater yesterday.
Yeah, it's weird that it's not showing up live on one of my screens, but I guess we are live, right? So Colby, but first let's get to our Chris's University Spirit ad read. We appreciate Chris's sponsoring the podcast as always. Normally I have a better setup than this. I'm using a backup laptop, as I mentioned off the top of the show, but we're going to make do because I think a lot of people want to dive into the Oklahoma State-Utah game. We do appreciate Chris's University Spirit. Hopefully a lot of you stopped by there when you were in Stillwater this weekend for what was really, Colby, a huge setting for Oklahoma State. You know, Big Fox, 3 o'clock kick, prime afternoon audience to watch, two top 15 ranked teams. So we appreciate Chris's being with us as always. The game didn't turn out the way we were quite expecting it to, but Colby, we've got a lot to break down. We have lots of comments flowing in here, but
let me interrupt you again. We are definitely not live.
We're not.
No, somebody said different link, boys. No, go to the page.
Okay, let's share this link. Again, I'm rusty.
Maybe it's just on a different link.
Yeah, I think so.
It's
been a while since I've done this.
Live.
There's a totally different link.
Different link. Okay.
Just one with my ugly mug on it. Let's go back here.
Oh,
okay, let's share this link.
There we go. Yeah.
Again, I'm rusty.
Maybe it's just on a different link. Big Carson head.
Yeah, I think so. Well, this is about as well as the game plan for Oklahoma State offense. We have this link here.
This is perfect. This is a perfect way to recap the Oklahoma State Utah game.
Hey, you know what? I'm not benching you, Colby. I'm going to stick with you.
Don't get me started. I can't even get started yet.
All right. Let's see if this works. Have you ever tried to send a link now on YouTube, how it just gives you like generic lettering and not the actual URL?
Anyway. No, I don't believe I have, but this took just long enough for me to see Lamar Jackson cut through the Cowboys defense like knife through hot butter and score a touchdown. So great start.
We're making do. My picture isn't very clear. Wrong link, but we are here. Welcome to the show. All right, Colby, all our snafus are out of the way. We appreciate Chris's University Spirit sponsoring the podcast. We're going to get to our Yingling Toast of the Week. Not very many candidates from Oklahoma State side of things, but plenty from Utah. And Colby, let's get right to it, man. I mean, we've seen this offense struggle like this before. It did against South Dakota State. It did certainly, or I'm sorry, it did against Arkansas in the first half, and they stuck with Alan Bowman and came back to win the game. I think this loss is squarely on the shoulders of Mike Gundy. One, you just don't get rid of Casey Dunn, which we'll get to. Two, benching Alan Bowman there cost them the game. And look, I am not going to sit here and say, well, look at what happened in the fourth quarter. They went down and scored. Like, I give Utah all the credit in the world. In fact, this game's not solely on Mike Gundy. I want to give Utah the most credit here. They came into Stillwater and bullied Oklahoma State. They had better schemes. They had better play calling. They were better on defense. They were better going forward on fourth down from their head coach. OSU got dominated in every facet of the game. And Mike Gundy's sitting up there on his podium, Colby, saying, well, sometimes in the first part of college football seasons, teams just lose games. They just give them away. No, take no credit from them, but I thought we gave them a lot. I don't view it that way, Colby. I think Utah was the clearly better coach team. They bullied OSU, talked smack to them while doing it, and OSU had no answers. And then Mike Gundy makes one of the bigger gaffes he's ever made at quarterback, and that list is very long. I want to go through the list at some point today, but that's where I'm at. This game, I give Utah total credit, but Mike Gundy gave them no chance by going to Garrett Rangel. No chance whatsoever.
Yeah, in what was the first edition of Mike Gundy v. Kyle Whittingham, that was a big dub for Kyle Whittingham. You can go ahead and throw an extra W on the front of his name. It's Whittingham at this point after what they accomplished yesterday in Stillwater. They come out there, no Cam Rising, backup quarterback, but their ability to run the football gave them options offensively, and they didn't play great. I mean, they turned it over a few times, lost a fumble, had another one they could have lost when they were already down 3-0 early in that game. They end up going down to score instead. And the benching of Alan Bowman, and I had people texting me at halftime asking if he should be benched. So obviously we are playing Sunday afternoon quarterback, if you will, on what happened in the game yesterday. But I've got text messages. I was asked, should he be benched at halftime? And I unequivocally said, no, he's been better in second halves. This is what they do, right? This is what they do. They go into the locker room at Boone Pickens Stadium, having played a terrible first half, and then they come out and they figured things out. For whatever reason, if you give them 6 days, they don't have a good scheme for the first 30 minutes. But if you give them 16 minutes to figure out what to do in the second half, for some reason, they've been able to make adjustments and come out and look good in the second half. I didn't think there was any chance that he would be benched. When I saw Rangel walking out, first of all, the two biggest cheers of the day were when Bowman got benched and when Rangel got benched. Those were the two biggest cheers of the day. So, don't let the fan base pick what you're going to do at quarterback. I was really shocked to see Rangel come out. Look, I thought Bowman was atrocious in the first half. I did. Some of that is the offensive staff and the scheme, the inability to run the ball, which I think is on the staff. You're putting your quarterback in a tough spot when it's 2nd and 10 and 3rd and 10 every possession. But Casey Dunn and Mike Gundy aren't the one spiking the football at the feet of the receivers, throwing that bad interception across his body over the middle of the field when nothing's going on. You can just go into halftime down 10-3. And that ended up being the score, but it took some luck to get there after that interception. I understand Bowman played poorly. He played poorly in the first half of that Arkansas game too. And then he came back in the second half and he started to make some throws. And he figured it out and they won the game. And after that Arkansas game, Mike Gundy talked about not panicking, not showing panic, not letting that you think something's going wrong, just not letting it show that you're in a bad spot. That was a panic button move from Mike Gundy to bench Alan Bowman at halftime. He wasn't good. I understand the people who want him benched. And look, I stumped for Alan Bowman all summer. It's hard to do after what we saw yesterday. Those last 5 minutes, that is what it is whenever Utah backs off and you score a couple late that are pretty much meaningless unless you recover an onside kick. And that's about a 1 in 100 probability. I understand he was bad in the first half. I think the decision is indefensible to bench him, and that's 100% on Mike Gundy. I don't put the loss 100% on Mike Gundy. I put a lot of it on Mike Gundy, but I put a lot of it on Casey Dunn. I put some of it on Alan Bowman. Sure, he played poorly. Garrett Rangel, if you want to be the guy, that was your opportunity. You weren't the guy. It's just everything went wrong. There are a lot of people who share responsibility, but it ultimately falls at the feet of the head coach who, again, baffling quarterback decision after baffling quarterback decision. And I guess we should preface this by saying, obviously, he's the greatest coach in school history. We love him and we hope he's here for another decade. That being said, these little things that happen along the way are just infuriating. And the Bowman benching, against Utah is going to be one of those that we remember, because I think it took away the chance for Oklahoma State to mount a second half comeback whenever the score was in a reasonable place for them to do so.
It was a one-score game. It was a 7-point game. I know it felt like it was a 17 or 20-point game at that point. It was a total panic decision. I think you're totally right about that. And look, like, I'll get to Casey Dunn, and like that's ultimately how they've gotten to this point on offense. But the knee-jerk reaction to take Bowman out goes right up near the top of his worst coaching decisions when it comes to quarterbacks. And for some reason, Mike, being an ex-quarterback, gets this wrong more than he gets it right. And look, I certainly I thought the play calling was the reason Alan Bowman was not playing well for most of the first half. But when you get to that last possession, he's throwing in the dirt, obviously the interception. At that point, I'm fine with making a move at quarterback. I'm fine with taking him out for a series. As Mike Gundy said himself in the post game, it's sometimes good to take him out, let him calm down, and throw in a relief pitcher and see if Rangel hits a big play early. Okay, then let him play. I thought he stuck with it way too long. And Colby, I thought he played the wrong quarterback. What has Garrett Rangel shown us? Look, we all like the kid. His dad just followed me on Twitter. I don't want to be mean to the kid. He's loyal and true. He's stuck it out. He's still at Oklahoma State. He has a 51% completion percentage over his career and a 1-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, 6 and 6, 6 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. Other than being an upperclassman, what has he shown more in practice than Zane Flores? And look, people can say, Carson, you haven't watched Zane Flores play. I haven't. Mike Gundy said he's ready now. Those are his words, not mine. That's from the head coach that watches them every single day. Said he's, quote, ready now. And if he's not ready to go in that game, Colby, what game is Zane Flores ready to go in for? Because again, we like Garrett Rangel. Seems like a good kid. He's not the answer. He never has been. And if you want to throw him out there because that's who you want to go with, Mike, that's fine. He just stuck with him way too long.
Yeah, and, Rangel, the ball pops out of his hand. Like, he's got a good throwing motion. He throws a good ball. He's just proven to be a little bit inaccurate over the years, that he's gotten spot starts. And it's tough to even evaluate Rangel because of the limited situations that we've seen him in. Last year, the quarterback carousel was a disaster. I think he got the worst of the three quarterbacks in that, just the situations that he was in, game script wise, in those games. And then yesterday's thrown in there against Utah. That's not an easy space to be put in, but he's got Brennan wide open on like a 20-yard out, and he just misses him. Like, things like that. And then I texted you going into the fourth quarter, you're down 22-3 with half of a quarter left. Like, that game's pretty much unwinnable at that point. And yes, they got it down to an onside kick. Like I said earlier, an onside kick is a 1 in 100 proposition. You're almost never recovering that. That can't be your saving grace, that you're going to recover an onside kick. You've got 8 games left, and you just told me, you, and everybody else watching that game, hey, maybe Bowman's not our guy. And then you saw in the third quarter, Rangel's not our guy. And Flores doesn't get a snap. Like, I thought that benching Rangel and bringing Bowman back even was a mistake. And I know that it resulted in 2 touchdowns. I'm telling you my thought process in the moment. In the moment, I was thinking, okay, Bowman doesn't have us today. And you told us by benching him that you're not 100% sure he's the guy that can win you tough games and win a Big 12 championship. And then Rangel didn't have it, and he gets pulled. And Flores doesn't get a chance in that moment to see what he has in live action against a good defense in the fourth quarter. Maybe you go down the field and score. Maybe you don't. You end up throwing Bowman out there. Yes, in hindsight, the momentum going into next week and all that stuff looks good. But I just thought all of the decision-making at the time was so odd. And Bowman played great down the stretch. He found some rhythm. But I just think that is totally not the point. And it's missing the point about Mike Gundy sending mixed signals about his confidence in Alan Bowman, about who the backup is and should be moving forward. Like, what if this happens again in Manhattan? What if you go into halftime in Manhattan and you're down 17-6 or something like that, and Bowman's playing terrible? Is it Rangel again? Do you just stick with Bowman? Now is it Flores after having not seen any snaps? I'm not ready to totally sound off the alarm bells and say this team's going to go 6-6. I don't think they are. It's a veteran team. I listened to Brennan after the game yesterday. I listened to Mahalski after the game yesterday. I think that they've got enough old veteran leadership on this team where they're going to buckle down and they're still going to be a team. I think they can still win 9 games, 10 games. I don't know. Maybe that's possible, but I just so question what Mike Gundy was doing yesterday at quarterback. And And it just goes back to what really I think has been his weak spot as a head coach, which is quarterback decisions. He got a lot of those wrong. Now, to his credit, he got a lot of offensive coordinator decisions right until now. And Carson, we are in a situation where you've got former players on Twitter, Kenyon Williams, Desmond Jackson, asking if people are ready to have the conversation now. You've got the evidence laid out in front of you as to what this offense looks like at times under Casey Dunn. You've got a team that trails in the third quarter of almost every game they play against a good opponent because after 6 days to prepare for that opponent, they come out with a bad scheme. I just, yeah, it's time to have the conversation about Casey Dunn. He's obviously your guy for the rest of the season, but it's pretty clear that Oklahoma State does not have an elite guy back there calling plays, and that's what we got used to with Holgorsen and Monken, and I'd say all but year one Yurcich. We've just had elite guys calling plays, and now we have an average offensive coordinator, and at times it's average to bad. So I know I kind of filibustered there. I'll throw it back to you. We've got a lot of thoughts stacking on top of each other here.
Well, and we got lots of comments coming in. We're going to try and get to those. Let me wrap up quarterback before we get to Casey Dunn. Like, and again, the main reason I had a problem with it going to Rangel, you saw it. Like, you can blame Shetron for being tired on the deep ball that he just missed. Like, how long did it take Bowman to get the timing down with the receivers last year? Throwing out Rangel at halftime is just not going to do it. Like, it's just a terrible coaching decision. It just is. Like, Bowman has all the reps. He has all the repetitions with these guys. He has all the timing. And again, I just think Mike Gundy gave them no chance to win in the second half by going to Rangel. To me, Colby, this felt like one of those Bedlam games that Mike just shuts it down. It felt that way. He punts at midfield on a short yardage, and in his post game, he's like, "Well, we hadn't gained a yard all game. What makes you think we'll start now? We're just going to punt it away." Very much like the Bedlam losses, where he just quit trying.
Did it twice, by the way. We had a 4th-and-1 punt on midfield right after the first Trey Rucker interception. I thought that one was indefensible. I was beside myself in the stands. The 4th-and-2, that's a couple more yards, but where you're at in the game at midfield, I like that one. I like going for it there as well. Everybody knows kind of where I stand on 4th-and-1, 4th-and-2, midfield or better. And he punted it twice, and both times Utah was pretty much immediately right back to midfield.
Yeah, I'm trying to get I've got the multi-speaker view on the Zoom, but not the YouTube. I completely agree with the comment. One of the first comments we got was they called us boomers and golf boys. I definitely feel like a boomer right now trying to work this while talking.
I want to be clear. This is Carson's department. So if I was there and I could be helpful, I would like to be. And that's my defense for not having to do it because I can't guarantee that I would do any better.
It's going to take me a couple Googles to figure out what I'm doing wrong here, but I'll figure it out. This first one of the year. Okay, now let's get to Casey Dunn. So this is nothing new, like you mentioned. I mean, I looked up Colby yards per play. I think that's a good barometer. There's another post out there I want to mention from on Reddit that's been making its way on the chamber about points per drive. But let's start with the yards per play. I think it's a good indicator of how successful you are as a whole. 2017, they were 4th in the country. That was under Yurcich. 2018, Yurcich last year, they were 21st in the country. Gleason, they were 30th. Then they hired Casey Dunn. So 4, 21, 30. It's slipping a little under Mike. 2020, first year under Casey Dunn, they're 74th. 21, they're 77th. 22, they're 99th. Last year, they were 41st once they figured out, once Mike Gundy and the offensive coordinator figured out who their quarterback was and figured out that they have Ollie Gordon on the team, they snuck up to 41st. This year so far, I think they're 43rd. I'm not sure if that factors in the Utah game. But, like, this is nothing new, Colby. Like, OSU's offense has been slipping since they hired Casey Dunn as the offensive coordinator. And for me, it's very similar to when Mike Gundy was calling I think Mike Gundy would call better plays. I mean, his tenure as the offensive coordinator did not end well with the injury to Zach Robinson, Des Bryant getting suspended. There were some real reasons that offense completely fell apart. I thought he should have played Brandon Whedon down the stretch. So that's another quarterback decision. When Zach Robinson's arm's falling off, he didn't play Brandon Whedon. Another terrible quarterback decision. But to me, Colby, this is so much like 2009 when Mike had to go hire Dana Holgorsen. Whether that was his choice or not, it's debatable. And you had a clip this weekend of Brandon Whedon talking about the culture change under Dana Holgorsen. And I'm not advocating you go hire Dana. His star has dropped quite a bit. He's an analyst at TCU. But I think it's time for fresh ideas, someone to bring in their own offense and their own ideas and totally start from scratch. Because what they're doing, they have the best running back in the country. They have a ton of super senior offensive linemen that have not gotten any better under Charlie Dickey. They're and just a slew of wide receivers. Colby, they're never going to have they're rarely, I should say never say never, but they're rarely going to have an offense with this much talent at their disposal, with this much experience. And it's about as bad of an offense as I've seen under Mike Gundy. And that falls on the offensive coordinator.
Yeah, 100% it does. And all those stats that you threw out there in the yards per play and all that stuff, that's great. Love stats. I don't need stats to make my assessment of Casey Dunn and of this offense because I'm there. I'm watching the games. I'm seeing it live and in person, and the eye test is plenty to tell you what you need to see. And it's the crazy, just like forgetting of the good plays in the playbook. The toss against Arkansas. I mean, you tweeted out our text conversation yesterday. Carson, I'm losing my mind in the stadium watching them run the same play over and over and over again, knowing that after the game, they're going to stand there and they're going to say, well, we just got to execute better. Well, Casey Dunn's not going to say that because he doesn't talk to the media anymore after the games. But yeah, we just got to execute better. No, that's not the solution. It's to just execute better. You're not executing. That's not working. Where's the toss play that worked against Arkansas? You know how many times they ran it yesterday? 0. The same number Ollie Gordon wears on his back. 0. The same number of yards they picked up on that great play yesterday. 0. The Ollie Cat, as people are calling it right now in the chat. That was unbelievable. Like you said, I was calling for it last year. People who've been listening for a long time, why are Ollie Gordon and Brendan Presley not in the backfield together? Sure, it takes the threat of the pass away, but guess what? When Alan Bowman is taking the snap, that takes the threat of the runaway because you cannot run the ball right now. The Ollie Cat, I think, should be just a normal part of your playbook. I mean, it's a play that you could run once or twice a series if you wanted to, depending on how far you go. They had multiple opportunities in the second half to run the Ollie Cat with Ollie and Brendan. They had a 2nd and 4 whenever Rangel was in there in the third quarter. Could have run it then. They had a 2nd and 5 at one point in the fourth quarter with Bowman in there. They could have run it then. He chooses not to go back to plays that are working. And in a running game, which is just decimating your offense. Bowman was bad. I get it. We'll single him out later and talk more about his play. But when you can't run the ball at all and you're always in 3rd and 10, I mean, we talked about that. They were 3rd and 8.5 through a couple of games of the season is what they were averaging, which is why their 3rd down conversion percentage was down. Yesterday, it was 3rd and 10, 3rd and 11 on every drive. You're killing your quarterbacks because you can't run the ball. And you find effective ways to run the ball, and you just choose not to do it, that is indefensible. You cannot stand there and tell me that you just have to execute better. The first time they ran the Ollie Cat, the first and only time they ran the Ollie Cat yesterday, I texted you, and I said, they're 1 for 1 with that formation. They'll probably finish the game 1 for 1 in that formation, and they did not run it again. Brennan got, 12 yards on that play? Had Ollie kept it, he probably would have gotten double that. Like, I just can't defend Casey Dunn finding plays that work in the running game and then just never using them again and going right back to the exact same thing that is getting stuffed. And they keep telling me we've got to execute better. I'm sorry. Yeah, we do need to execute better. And by we, I mean the coaches. I mean, Mike Gundy and Casey Dunn need to execute better, and they need to call some creative things in the running game that work, like wide tosses to get Ollie Gordon out of the middle, like the Ollie Cats to make teams have to worry about Brennan going side to side. Also, they ran the jet flip to Brennan yesterday. They ran it one time in the first half. First quarter, I think, they ran the jet flip to Brennan. And it got stopped for no gain. But guess what? It's one more thing for Utah to have to think about if you run it 4 times a game instead of once. Maybe they don't stop it every single time, but you don't know because you only gave it one chance. It's just the run game is atrocious, and it is entirely the responsibility of the offensive staff.
And you just juxtapose the game plan and the play calling from Oklahoma State with Utah. Utah's got a freshman quarterback in there, and he looked like the 7th-year guy. You don't want to know why? Because there's actual schemes being run. There's actual scripting being done to lure defenses into one play and then going with the other. The play actions they were doing with Isaac Wilson got guys running wide open. When is the last time, Colby, you saw an OSU wide receiver just running wide open? I went back and watched the game this morning for as much as I could stomach. Every single time Alan Bowman drops back to pass, there's hardly anyone there to throw it. the guys are covered. And you mentioned to me via text, he would throw it a little early sometimes. That was probably throwing them off the most early in that game. Was Alan Bowman was off with his timing. He was letting it go too soon. But the play calling from Utah put their best players in the best positions running full speed. Dorian Singer, how many catches did he catch full speed? Even caught one off the back of his helmet that I didn't think was a catch. But the tight end literally walks, actually walked. And he could have turned around and moonwalked into the end zone. He was walking so slow because that's how much of a walk-in touchdown it was. It's there was no greater disparity. Perhaps the Arkansas game is right there with it in terms of quality play calling versus I have no idea what I'm doing play calling and predictable play calling. Again, go back and watch it. Alan Bowman's dropping back to pass, everyone's covered. And it reminds me of the South Alabama game. What did they tell us, Colby? That we knew what was coming. We knew what plays they had. We knew what they were going to run. Sure looked a lot like that against Utah because here's their first downs, Colby. 14 plays they had first down. They ran 14 of them. OSU did. They had 12 net yards, one turnover. Their average down and distance on second down was second and 8.4. No quarterback. Alan Bowman, Brandon Whedon is going to struggle if it's second and 8 every single possession. That's what it was essentially. A bunch of runs for 0 yards, bunch of incompletions. It's that bad. It's that predictable. And so Casey Dunn, like the question now, Colby, is Mike going to do anything about it? Like, is OSU a big boy football program? That's something I'm wondering coming into this show. You know, Mike Gundy has restricted Casey Dunn and Brian Nardo from talking after games. They talked after every game last year. That to me is small time. That's what you do as like in high school to shield your coaches from Casey Dunn's this associate head coach making millions of dollars as the offensive coordinator. He can talk to the media and answer a few questions about why his offense is terrible. Will Chad Weiberg, Dr. Shrum, and Mike Gundy, how's this going to go, Colby? Are they a big time football program, or does Mike just get to do whatever he wants and just keep guys because he likes them and has a family and he recruits a lot of really good wide receivers? Because if I'm Chad Weiberg, I'm demanding a change. Plain and simple. The runway's been long enough with Casey Dunn as the offensive coordinator. It's that simple.
Now, just quickly to clarify, are you implying a mid-season change, or you get through the season and then next year there has to be a new OC?
I mean, I've never really liked in-season offensive or defensive coordinator changes just because your staff has its roles for a reason. I think that you're down a man at that point. Maybe you could elevate an analyst. But I certainly see other big football programs doing that. If it gets to this point, when you have the nation's leading rusher and he literally can't gain a yard running the football. I mean, Oklahoma's done it mid-season. The results have varied, but that's what big-time football programs do. I mean, I would probably, if I was Mike Gundy, here's what I would do. I would take over the play calling duties myself, and I would let Casey Dunn coach the receivers. Tim Rattay, what's he do on a weekly? Maybe Tim Rattay could be up in the booth helping Mike call the plays. I don't know. I don't know his experience at that level, but I don't know what they're doing in practice, Colby. Like they went through a week of prep and went 3 and out, 7, 8 times? They did on their first possession. I know that. So yeah, that's what I would do. What do you say?
Yeah, and what hurts is like an average, maybe even a below average offensive performance yesterday wins that game. It can't just be one of the worst performances offensively in school history until the last 6 minutes. And then at that point, the game's basically unwinnable. So, yeah, tough one to swallow yesterday. I don't love a coordinator firing midseason, changing play callers. I don't think those things work very often. And I will be frustrated if Casey Dunn is still the offensive coordinator of Oklahoma State football in 2025, because I think we just have enough evidence now, enough of these games where Oklahoma State just comes out and looks totally unprepared in the first half. And I think that we've heard Mike Gundy tell us enough times now, yeah, our scheme was just bad coming into the game on offense. Yeah, we just had a bad scheme. We had to go in and adjust at halftime. I'm sorry, that's not acceptable this often. Like occasionally you get one wrong. Okay. Right. Occasionally you prep for an opponent. They throw you something you weren't prepared for. It's like, okay, we got that wrong. We'll go back to the drawing board. That's it. It's not a weekly occurrence. And this thing is a weekly occurrence now for Oklahoma State, at least whenever they play a good opponent, maybe not against Tulsa, but against any kind of good opponent, it absolutely is. I still don't like changing midseason because that disrupts just what is normal for everyone. Right.
I agree.
I said all off season in Gundy I trust, and I do still think that there's a chance they could fix this and get it right. But it's going to require them just letting go of their ego and just being stubborn and quite frankly just changing what they do offensively because it's not working. You talk about the South Alabama guy saying they knew what plays were coming. The interception Alan Bowman threw in the fourth quarter up the left sideline to Stribling right before Isaac Wilson completed the play action bomb for 50 yards for a touchdown. That interception that Bowman threw, you think that DB knew what was coming? If Oklahoma State goes deep, it's just a fade up the sidelines. All you have to do is stay outside the receiver, maintain your outside leverage. The kid ran the route for him, and that's the difference. I sent you another text yesterday. We could put all these on Twitter. I said, I really wish Sam Pittman was coaching Utah right now when Oklahoma State was needing to mount a fourth quarter comeback because a poorly coached team allows you to win in those scenarios. A well-coached team doesn't. Kyle Whittingham, that is a well-coached team. I have a lot of respect for what they do at Utah, what that program is, and the product that they put on the field yesterday. So you've got DBs running the routes for receivers. They really are able to do what my fear was, which, yes, they kind of have an extra man in the box, but that's kind of base for Utah. So they still had plenty of men in coverage. Bowman had nowhere to go with the ball. So now you end up in a situation where you can't run the ball and you're too stubborn for whatever reason to run the ball in a way that works with the ollie cat or with the toss. Again, both of which work, both of which they just seemingly are unwilling to go back to. And that is bad coaching. And it's indefensible. Now, again, I still don't think you can sit here on September. What is today? September 22nd and fire your OC. I think that would be a mistake. But I don't think it's a mistake for Mike Gundy to sit down with Casey Dunn and Tim Rattay and Charlie Dickey. And they've got to have a meeting of the minds and just kind of throw out what they're working with, especially in the running game. Because if they can do anything there, that frees up what you're doing through the air. We saw it at the end of last season. The Alan Bowman that we saw yesterday and against Arkansas, that's the Alan Bowman that you get when you can't run the ball because then he has nothing to work with, and he's good enough to be a good quarterback when he's got a complimentary run game. But he's not a superstar. So he's not good enough to just put the team on his shoulders whenever you know you can't run the ball and just pick up chunk plays on every down when they know you're throwing it. It's just the players are being put in a position to fail by the offensive staff. I think the four of those guys have to get in a room and they've got to figure out, okay, here is what we've been doing. That has to get thrown out. Here's the new stuff. And quite frankly, you've got 5 days. You've got 5 days to put some new stuff in to figure it out. We need more tosses. We need more ollie cat. I mean, you need to be running, what did they run yesterday? Like 59 plays or something, about 70% of how many Utah ran. If you're running, let's say 70 or 75 plays in a normal game, let's say 75. I mean, 15 of those, 1/5, should be ollie cat. 15 of those should be ollie cat. You've got to do something to get the run game going. You've got to operate out of 2nd and 6 and 3rd and 3 way more often. It just has to be an entirely new playbook for the running game specifically.
Utah had the ball 42 and a half minutes of a 60-minute game.
Hence why we haven't talked about the defense yet at all, because that's brutal. The first half when we were in the sun, Carson, in the West End Zone, you could have had a heat stroke sitting in the stands, and they're out there defending 81 plays. And by the way, the turf was in the sun the entire game. Those guys were dead. The defense was plenty good. That time of possession is embarrassing.
This is all from Bill Hastings' column. You should go read it. It's really good. He basically says that the score did not indicate how big of a butt kicking this was. Before the 6.5-minute mark of the fourth quarter, at which time OSU trailed 22-3, there had been 12 OSU possessions featuring 8 punts, a field goal, a missed field goal, and 2 turnovers. So Mike can sit there and say, well, man, just didn't have good schemes, and we kind of gave them some opportunities. No, you got flat out bullied in your house. Utah came in, did exactly what all their fans have been saying they were going to do since they got to the Big 12. OSU got the full Utah experience. This is what they do, Colby. They ugly games up. They out-physical you, they out-tough you, and they out-coach you. And that's what happened. I don't want to hear that, oh gosh, we missed a few field goals. It was only a 3-point game. I don't want to hear that. Like, that was prevent defense. That's the only reason OSU scored. But I want to get back to the offense real quick, Colby. The irony here is what you've mentioned. Casey Dunn even did what I was asking for, to put Ollie Gordon out wide and just throw it to him, get him out of the tackle box. Didn't work because they didn't block it worth a crap. But they never went back to that again. that first possession, Colby, the creativity and the wrinkles they threw out, I really liked. It was their best drive of the first half, almost the whole game until late. So, your thoughts on that? Just their
Yeah,
creativity?
just for clarification, second possession. First possession was 3 and out. They got it back
Oh,
quickly.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
they got it back quickly, and then they put a really nice drive together. That's the drive where they used the ollie cat. They used a bunch of motion on that drive, having guys lined out wide, and then you bring them all in at once, having guys bunched in on the end of the line, and then you split them out into the slot. They ran a play down near the goal line. It didn't end up working. Oklahoma State ended up settling for a field goal, but they ran a play where they had Rashad Owens in the slot and Brennan Presley out wide on his side, just giving the defense a look that they hadn't seen. And then as soon as they got behind, which was the next drive or maybe the drive after, as soon as they got behind, all creativity went out the window. We went back to base, and it didn't work until there were 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter of an unwinnable game. Yeah, the second drive out of the gate was really nice. Maybe those were some of the scripted plays that you didn't get to run on the first drive because you were 3 and out. You know, you come out with probably 10, 12, 15 plays that are scripted that you want to start the game with to go down, and then you're just making adjustments as the game progresses. Man, if those were just the scripted plays, and then whenever you don't have a script that you're reading off of, I mean, if you're not staring at the teleprompter, you go full Ron Burgundy and you don't know what's going on. I mean, I just I'm trying not to lose it the further we get into this. Let me read a YouTube comment because this kind of gets us to another place that I want to get to. ND says the problem is that we don't lose enough for Dunn to ever get fired. If Oklahoma State gets it somewhat together and gets 8 to 10 wins this season, Dunn will retain his job, wash, rinse, repeat in 2025. And Carson, this is what happened. And now we're going to relitigate the past, which I don't love doing because these are things that can't change now. But after the 2022 season, when everything crumbled and your entire offense, not your entire offense, a good chunk of your offense transferred, went other places. A guy had a chance to become the most winning quarterback in school history, and he left. And Casey Dunn kept his job. And Gundy, when he was asked about it after the season, Gundy got pissed and he blew a gasket at the idea that he would even consider making changes on his offensive coaching staff. And then last year, you have the worst September ever. Then you get it together and you win just enough games that last year, I wasn't calling for Dunn's firing after the season. If memory serves me correctly, you weren't either. Neither were the people in the YouTube comments. And it's because we all felt good because we had won just enough games to trick ourselves into thinking that Casey Dunn had figured it out offensively. And we had won the final bedlam, and we felt good. We had that warm, fuzzy feeling of those big wins and of that comeback against BYU. We totally forgot what the first half looked like because of what the second half looked like. We totally forgot that Casey Dunn came into the game against BYU with a scheme that allowed them to be down 24-6 or whatever it was at halftime. I don't care that it was in the rain. BYU played in the rain too, and they weren't any good, and they ran you into the locker room at halftime, getting smoked on your home field, and then you took over after you made your adjustments. It's a problem that I think the commenters right on about. If Oklahoma State goes on to win 10 games this year, I think we're going to run into another situation where Casey Dunn gets brought back, and then we have games next year where it's just mediocre offense. And look, this team might win 7 games. They might win 9. They might win 11. I don't know what's going to happen in college football. This is so random. Look what happened across the board last night in college football, in Provo, in Boulder. You know, the victory cigar formation that Dave Aranda ran on the Hail Mary there. College football's so random. But if Oklahoma State wins 10 games again, we're going to find ourselves in another situation where they did just enough that we forget what happened against Utah and Casey Dunn gets to retain his job. And I'm just ready for something different because there are a lot of innovative, elite offensive minds in the game of football right now, more than ever before. And Oklahoma State, quite frankly, just does not have one right now.
No, and again, Casey Dunn's making what, more than $1 million? I mean, this is big business, and this is a results-based business. And you're so right. Like, it just feels like such a wasted opportunity based on the way things crumbled in 2022. And now you have this team with Ollie Gordon and all the people I've mentioned, everyone knows, and they're inept. Colby, is this the worst offense since when? I mean, 2014. That's the last time they didn't gain 200 yards was 2014. They were on pace to do that until the Utes started running the prevent defense. But it's to that point where despite all the talent they have, it's never been worse. So I do want people to ask questions in the chat. We can get to anything you want to talk about. And I've been asked by multiple people, why would they go with Rangel? Just real quick, Colby, then we get to questions and talk a little bit about the defense. And I just think this is a loyalty thing from Mike Gundy. He rewards players who have stuck it out. I mean, how else do you explain Alex Cate being ahead of Brandon Whedon? Um, and for me, what's weird about it is Mike did go with Wes Lunt. People always forget this, and it's easy to forget because it didn't go well. But Wes Lunt was a freshman, and he beat out Clint Shelf and J.W. Walsh, who had both played the year before. Or I'm sorry, this was the year after Brandon Whedon. This was 2012. Three-man quarterback race. He picks Wes Lunt, who gets hurt, never really panned out, and that year Shelf and Walsh kind of traded off before the big 2013 year from Shelf. It's almost like that one experience. It's like Mike thinks that true freshmen will get hurt. Like he's very reticent to play true freshmen. And I wonder if that has something to do with it, because really that's the only explanation, Colby, to play Rangel over Flores. Based on Mike Gundy himself. People can say, Carson, you don't know. This kid's from Nebraska. He's a 3-star. You don't know how good he is. Mike Gundy said he's ready now. I mean, that's the head coach. And Mike doesn't step out on limbs like that for no reason. He was pretty confident in saying that.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm just reading through the YouTube here. Somebody said, I told my buddy after that empty wide receiver screen to Ollie that they would build on that look. Never saw it again. And that just goes back to the point.
What I said.
Yeah, that just goes back to the points we've been making all pod, which is like, it's like they find something that works. And they're like, we'll stash that one away. Maybe we'll get to that here in a couple of weeks. We'll see how conference play is going. It just, I feel like a broken record this season with what happened offensively against Arkansas. And then now this week against Utah. It doesn't make sense. What are they doing that doesn't make sense? Rangel doesn't take a genius to see that he's not the guy. And again, I don't want this to be the Bag on Rangel podcast. Like, he's been loyal. He stuck around. He had his chance. It didn't go right for him. He's working inside the same scheme that we're sitting here ripping as well. Somebody says, why can't we bring Whedon on staff? The dude played under Holgerson and Monken. I mean, look, Whedon's never been a play caller before. That would be pretty wild considering there are, I don't know, 200 college football programs, and a bunch of them have hot young play callers. I shouldn't say a bunch of them, but there are points being scored all around college football. I've got 3 TVs. I sat there last night. My wife went to bed, daughter was in bed, and I sat there with the 3 TVs, and I watched college football for like 3 hours, and I watched great offense. I watched guys in motion. I saw guys get into space. Carson, that's what you talked about earlier. When is anybody in space? It's a contested fade up the sideline. You know, we ran the you can call it a deep slant or a shallow post to Rashad Owens for 25 yards in the first half. That worked great based on the look that Utah was giving you defensively. You know how many times they ran that the rest of the game? You know how many times they found Owens on the deep slant?
Zero.
Talon Shetter looks pretty good. He goes out there. He's running through people like they're bowling pins, and we can't find a way to get the ball in his hands any more often. It's a complete failure of the offensive staff. And I don't even know. It's not like there's a quick fix unless they kind of do what we're talking about and just fix the running game by throwing away everything they're doing and just having a different running game with a serious dose of the Ollie Cat and getting Ollie out wide. We saw at the end of that game, Utah was backed off a little bit. He still got some burst. He's still Ollie Gordon if you can just get him out in space a little bit. And go ahead. I know you're ready to hop in with a thought. I just keep going on and on because it's just I keep thinking of another thing and another thing and another thing that's driving me crazy about this offense.
No, I mean, and I don't want to, like, I think the entire staff needs an overhaul, frankly. I don't think this just boils down to Casey Dunn. I mean, Charlie Dickey, has he been worse? Has he been worse than any of the line coaches they've had over the years? I mean, they have no push. They run zone blocking and they can't move anyone. Part of me wonders, Colby, are they running too much RPO as well? Like, do these offensive linemen need to just be told, we're running it or we're throwing it? You're either run blocking or you're pass blocking. Part of me wonders, is this RPO the reason they're getting no push up front at all? And if that's the case, Colby, no one is concerned about Alan Bowman running the football himself. So it's basically, are they handing it to Ollie or are they throwing? And the offensive line doesn't seem to know which they're doing until they're already losing ground to defensive lines. But I think Tim Rattay has shown me very little. Charlie Dickey's shown me nothing. I think he should have been gone in 2022, along with Casey Dunn. And Casey Dunn as well. I mean, look, I like Casey Dunn. I've said this many times. I got to play golf with him several times. Great dude. But again, this is a results-based business. And OSU football has to be elite on offense. Have to. They're never going to be elite on defense, even though they were that one year in 2021. I still don't really quite know how that happened. But let's face it, Colby, they have to score points. They have to be dynamic offensively. And it's never been worse. It wasn't this bad in 09 when Mike was calling the plays. It just wasn't.
No, it wasn't at all. Not at all. Got one here. Nick asks, Colby, what did it feel like in the stadium? What was the pulse? And he asks, how's your mom feeling about all of this? It felt weird in the stadium. I don't even know how to describe it. Almost like one of those apocalypse movies where the apocalypse comes and then the people that are remaining are standing around looking at each other like, does anybody know what's going on? I mean, especially before the little comeback there, before the surge in the fourth quarter, the stadium had already started to clear out some. I mean, it was hot yesterday in that stadium. One of the hottest games I can remember at kickoff in that stadium. Student section had started to clear out. A bunch of other places cleared out. And it felt different even like the third quarter of that Arkansas game. They got some things going, and you could start to feel an energy bubbling in the stadium. And the fans that were there were still trying to make some noise on third down and trying to do their part. But it's really hard to get yourself worked up when it's 3 and out and it's 3 and out and it's 3 and out and it's just the same stuff. And it's a first down run and now it's 2nd and 10 or it's 2nd and 11. It was a lot of frustration in that stadium yesterday. A lot of the conversations that usually happen in the stands were happening for a little while. And then I think everyone just got resigned to what was happening, and the frustration turned into apathy. And it was just more of, here we go again. Here we go again. 3rd and 11. Wonder what's going to happen here. Wonder what defense they're going to line up in here. Wonder if Bowman's going to have anybody wide open on this play. The answer was no, pretty much all day. So yeah, I would say great energy to start the game. And then it turned to confusion and then frustration and then apathy before the little burst there at the end. And as I'm sure you can guess, Nick, my mom was handling it not great, we'll call it. She did get to hold the baby in the second half. My nephew was there, and he's about 2 months old, and that helps calm her down. So he's, what would you call it, a therapy baby? Kind of like the therapy dogs people take on planes. My mom takes a therapy baby to the football stadium with her.
Well, that's good. Hopefully that calmed her down. I don't care if you're Mr. Orange Power himself. No one's going to be fired up with what they witnessed on Saturday against Utah. Like, we put far too much discussion, criticism into how into the game the fans are when the coaching staff and team lay a complete egg. And Colby, OSU should be 2-2 right now. Like, you and I were very high on this team. We both bet the over. We both bet them to make the Big 12 championship game. They very easily should be 2-2. And it's kind of my bigger concern holistically, besides just the fact that Casey Dunn's run this offense completely into the ground with a Heisman Trophy level running back. They've won a lot of close games over the last year and a half. And law of averages says that evens out. And I'm starting to wonder, again, I feel like I do this every year when they lose a couple games and everyone's on mic and myself included. And I get back to like recruiting rankings and how they're not that talented overall, but I can't say that this year. But I think that all the statistics and the metrics, people that I know that are into the stats have said that OSU is probably about a 7-win team, which I scoffed at in preseason. I thought there's no way. You didn't watch this team play last year. Look at who they have coming back. There's very little weaknesses, but the spreadsheet socialists might be right on this one. Maybe Oklahoma State's much more of an average football team than an elite one. And I would be dead wrong about that, because I thought they were 11-win Big 12 championship caliber team.
Yeah, I still don't know that I'm ready to say that this is a 7-win football team. And I know it looked really bad yesterday. I just don't want to totally overreact and bury the entire season, because I did that last year. And then I felt like a dunce about middle of November when things were going great. So I want to be careful to not bury the entire season based on one result that we saw yesterday. Now, if Oklahoma State was playing OU's remaining schedule, I'd be ready to bury this thing. The Big 12 right now very much looks like Utah, the field, Arizona State. Like that's the conference. Utah, the field, Arizona State. Maybe you can throw Houston down there too. Cincinnati beat them 34-0 yesterday. there are, I don't know, 7 teams, 8 teams that have a claim to that second spot in the Big 12 championship game still at this point. I mean, BYU's 4-0. They smoked Kansas State at home last night. Nobody's expecting BYU to be in the title game. Why not? Why not UCF? Why can't they get there? Why can't your Cyclones get there? Kansas State still has a chance. Oklahoma State, believe it or not, still has a chance. TCU's not any good. They gave us 66 to SMU yesterday. They probably don't have a chance either. But West Virginia, they beat Kansas, got a chance. I mean, 6, 7, 8 teams in a 16-team conference can compete for that second spot in the Big 12 championship game. And the result in Provo last night helps you so much if you're Oklahoma State. Because I thought if Kansas State goes there and wins that game after what they did to Arkansas last week at home, then all of a sudden you're looking at what appears to be a pretty good Kansas State team. So if you don't beat them in Manhattan this week, now you need Utah and Kansas State to one or the other lose 3 conference games for you to have a chance. Well, now with Kansas State's loss last week, it looks much more open, which is why I'm upset, but I still think, based on what we saw last year and the run game getting fixed, like, to me, that's the one thing you have to fix, because I think fixing the running game fixes the passing game. If you can run the ball, I think that fixes the passing game, because now you can operate out of 3rd and 3, and you can run pick plays with Brennan to the outside. You can do some different things. So I'm not ready to bury the whole season yet. I don't think it's a 7-win team. I think I've certainly backed off my 11-1 prediction, because we've got 4 games of results now that tell me this is not an 11-1 football team. But this conference, 9-3, could get you to Arlington. We just don't know. It's a veteran team. I don't think this is going to be 2022 all over again, but it's going to take some serious soul searching from Mike Gundy and the offensive staff to admit to themselves that what they are doing has been an abject failure through 4 weeks, and they have to change and just throw it out and do everything completely different in the running game.
Well, I think you're touching on the reason for optimism. One, they played the best team in the Big 12, Utah, without their starting quarterback, by the way. Mike made a bunch of. Can I just read this quote? I can't get over this quote. Let me pull this up again. Mike Gundy after the game, like, this is terrible.
Did you read quotes, or did you watch it, or both?
I watched it, and I'm reading. It looks worse in print, but I watched it.
It does look worse in print. It was very I don't know how to describe his energy in the post game.
Defensive?
Like frazzled is almost how I would describe it. Like, he was pacing around. He only talked into the microphone for like a quarter of it. He was like walking closer to people as they were asking questions, and then he was walking out and he kept twisting his water bottle. Like, the offseason and the happy-go-lucky, jolly Mike Gundy that we saw. I mean, the offense imploded and was embarrassed yesterday afternoon, and I thought we saw a pretty frazzled Mike Gundy in the postgame.
Quote, I have a ton of respect for Utah, class organization, well coached, great guys after the game, first class all the way. Came and played physical and ran the ball, but I told the Cowboy player, I told them, like, it says them, so they put in parentheses, but I told Cowboy players you gave them a victory. Like, you got absolutely dominated. Like, so again, like, back to my original point, you're right. Gundy was just completely frazzled. And look, I would hate to have to do a press conference after doing my job. That has to suck. I feel for Mike in that way, and explain why, your $1 million offensive coordinator can't run the football with the best running back in the country. That's tough to explain. It's tough to explain what you do every week in practice offensively, frankly. But the reasons for optimism here, you lose to the best team in the Big 12. Cam Rising had played, that game would have been a lot worse because they settled for a ton of field goals, which we needed to talk about the defense. That's probably reason number 2 for optimism. The defense showed me something in this game. Yeah, they gave up some 4th downs, but my God, they were on the field the entire game, Colby, as I'm sure you were going to bring up. So if you just get some semblance of simplification of the offense, they need to simplify things. We're not doing RPO. We're running the football with Ollie, or we're passing it. Done. Block it. Block the man in front of you and move him. I'm not joking, Colby. They need to dumb this thing down, because clearly they're thinking way too hard for it to be this bad. So there are reasons for optimism. And you're right. We've tried to bury this team under Mike Gundy several times and been flat out wrong. So I'm not going to do it here. And I do think there are reasons for optimism moving forward, starting with that K-State game as well that you mentioned.
Yeah, just the parity in the conference is what gives you optimism. You don't have 3 behemoths at the top that you're just not going to be able to get over the top. Again, It's possible 9-3 gets you there. You never know. And then we could end up in a situation where the Big 12 has like 5 teams tied and you're going through a goofy tiebreaker. And eventually we'll have one true champion. We'll figure it out. But yeah, so I was texting with a buddy of mine yesterday during the game. And, frustration, you just kind of say things in the game. And he texted me and he's like, man, we are not getting any breaks. And this was probably like middle of the third quarter. I texted him back. I said, they've turned it over 3 times and they missed a field goal. Like, the breaks were there. There were plenty of breaks. Trey Rucker made a couple of great plays. Both of those interceptions, phenomenal plays. The fumble that you fall on, very well done. Maybe it was a fumble, maybe it was turnover on downs, I'm not sure. But you mentioned all their 4th down conversions. It was 4th and short because they were able to run the ball. And I even thought that Oklahoma State did fine defensively against the Utah run, aside from the 2 big plays, one of which you blitz Isaac Wilson, you don't have contain, so then you're in man coverage with everybody running down the field. He takes off for 48 yards or whatever it was. The other one, I think you don't want to use fatigue as an excuse, but these are human beings. I mean, I told you, sitting in the stadium in the first half of that game was about as hot as I've ever been in Boone Pickens Stadium. And the sun is radiating off that turf, and they were out there for 43 minutes going against a tough, physical Utah team. So the other play where the back gets the ball and then Nick Martin hits him in the backfield, doesn't get him. Then he runs out to the edge. There's 2 other guys there, 12 yards down the field. They don't get him. Then he takes off for another 50, and it's a 62-yard run by the time you look up. Aside from those 2 plays, defense was pretty good all day. I mean, even the play-action play, Kel Smith kind of stumbled before he reached out to try to bat that ball down. That's tough. But you defend 81 plays, you're on the field for 43 minutes, and you're able to force 3 turnovers and hold them to 22 points. Like, I'm sorry, that's a game. Your defense does that. You've got to win that game. That game is not on the defense. It wasn't a perfect performance, but the defense held their own pretty well. They were good in coverage, especially considering that Utah played the entire game in good field position and ahead of the sticks. They operated in a lot of 2nd and 6s, a lot of 3rd and 3s, 4th and 2s, where they're running pick plays or they're bringing shallow crossers underneath, all the things that we wish Oklahoma State would do more often. That's what Utah was doing. You got the breaks with the turnovers. You got a good defensive performance, and your offense played one of the worst halves, one of the worst 3.5 quarters offensively in school history. I mean, it doesn't get a lot worse than that. There are others that are comparable, but to be worse than that, there's not a lot that's worse than that. So I don't have really much at all negative to say about the defense when you defend that many plays in that heat. I think if I'm weighing this in terms of like percentages, who's to blame percentage wise for this loss, I'm going 100% offense, 0% defense.
Score 1 for the Boomers. I got the split screen pulled up now on YouTube. I'm slowly matriculating the ball down the field as if I'm Iowa.
You know what it is, Carson?
The Iowa tech skills here.
There's 6 minutes left in the 4th quarter, and we're about to make a comeback on the technical stuff.
I think YouTube was running the prevent like Utah. I will say this about the defense, Colby. Yeah, like obviously the excuses are there with being on the field the whole time. The OSU was trying to go tempo as well, and which I liked that theory. I would prefer to go tempo after you make a first down, not from the first possession of the game. Like once you get a first down, the guys are already on the ground, then you go tempo, not when everyone just runs out there and huddles up right away. I would go tempo after getting a first down so you actually have some sustainability of a drive. Thought the tempo wore out OSU's defense, in addition just the overall time of possession. But they were heating up the freshmen early, Colby. They were blitzing. They were doing everything it's like both coordinators listened to me to start the game, and then they just said, no, we're going to go back to what we always do, and it's not working. They were heating up the freshman, Isaac Wilson, sacking him, getting pressure. And when they just started letting him just sit back there and throw, he made some good throws on them. I think, again, Utah had a great plan with him on play action. I would love to see their play action percentage in this game, but they kept OSU totally off balance with that. But Nardo's got to bring the heat, man. They're not good enough to just sit back, rush 3, rush 4, and hope to get off the field. They just can't do it.
Yeah, I'm reading through some more of the comments here. We got a good one. Talking about Mike Gundy. We were talking about what he looked like in his post-game press conference, and someone here described it as kind of panicky, trying to explain it away. And that is what happened. He did look panicky. He was trying to explain it away. And Carson, am I the only one who thought that there should have been a big mirror held up in front of Mike Gundy as he was saying, here, we can pretend this 8.5 by 11 here is a mirror. We can put this mirror up. Boom. Hold that up to Mike Gundy when he's saying that you gave them one. Coach, you gave them one. Your players didn't give them one. Your players are executing the scheme that you ran them out there with, that Casey Dunn ran them out there with. Let's hold up a mirror. You gave them one. Again, I'm not burying the season. I love Mike Gundy. In Gundy, I trust. I still think they can get this thing fixed. But yesterday, we're just talking about yesterday. Coach, that wasn't on the 21-year-olds. That wasn't on the 22-year-olds. That was on you. That was on the grown men making millions of dollars, making the decisions, and putting those kids in positions to fail.
Yeah, if Sam Pittman wants to say that after the Oklahoma State game, I'll listen in terms of giving a game away. Again, Utah just clubbed OSU over the head in their own house and said, what are you going to do about it? Nothing. What are you going to do on offense? Zero. So again, I think it was one of the most poorly coached games I can remember under Mike Gundy, one of the worst quarterback decisions. What ranks at the top? Probably Cade over Whedon, considering he's the greatest quarterback in school history, honored in the Ring of Honor. I think he's got a toast coming his way from Yingling. Put that up there near the top. I would put Clint Shelf being benched two series into the 2013 season. And then he goes on to have one of, like, literally led a game-winning drive to win the Big 12 in Bedlam. That's up there. Last year, the 3-quarterback system, again, they were trying to feel their way out, but playing your son, who's now at Emporia State, a majority of the non-conference, that's up there. I know I'm missing others, but it's just a long, strange list that just keeps getting added to.
Yeah, no doubt. I think another one, and this one would be further down the list. Like, we're tiering these things. This one would be in a lower tier. But there were some really good days under Corn Dog, and there were some really bad ones. And Spencer had 4 free ones to get some experience before he took over as the starter the following season. Never played a snap. So that one could probably go a little bit further down the list.
I like that one. I was probably the loudest voice on that.
Yep, I called that one out specifically for you. I knew you.
Yeah, and it was so much more than that. It was more of, you're going to have Tylan Wallace next year as a junior. Like, you have to you're starting from scratch with Spencer if you don't play him at all, versus get him experience for that. It was the next year that it really hurt them. People want to point out Corn Dog's stats in the games that he played well. They don't point out the ones he played horrible. But it hurt them. It hurt their future as much as the present.
Yeah, exactly. No doubt about it. And then the Bowman benching yesterday goes on the list. It's just, you come into the season with your QB1, you go 3-0 in the non-conference with your QB1. Your QB1 has a bad half in game 4, a game that you're trailing 10-3 at halftime, and you yank him. And then the lead is 22-3 by the time he gets back on the field. It's just, no. The lead was 16-3. Then he threw the pick up the sideline, then the play action. So 16-3 by the time he gets back on the field. It just, it's one of those that goes on the Gundy list of quarterback decisions that he's made. And it's a list that's getting too long, Carson. At some point, we've got to stop adding things to this list.
Yep, I agree. We'll get to more Twitter questions, YouTube comments, YouTube questions. But first, let's do the Yingling Toast of the Week, brought to you by Yingling, America's oldest brewery. Appreciate Yingling sponsoring the podcast. I pinned one of the comments at the top from Matthew Laster. He said it was a bad day to be a Yingling in Stillwater yesterday. I'm sure it was. Brutal heat, even worse football game. What dog we have visiting us here?
This is Vince, the golden retriever.
Vince.
He's not as old as he looks. He's 9, but man, that white around his eyes, he looks about 14, but he's a good dog.
Yeah, Vince doesn't care that OSU lost, but appreciate Yingling sponsoring the Toast of the Week. As always, Colby, I'm going to go with Kyle Whittingham. You and I have questioned whether Utah was ready for this, was ready for the Big 12. Could their toughness and their style of play translate to immediate success in a new league? The answer, at least after one test in Stillwater, is a resounding yes. And I guess they already beat Baylor at home, even though it technically wasn't a conference game. But you mentioned the mirror earlier. It's like a mirror with Kyle Whittingham and Mike Gundy. They were hired within a couple weeks of each other 20 years ago, have virtual identical resumes. But Whittingham has struck first blood, and I could not have been more impressed coming in with a backup freshman quarterback. Colby, they put 4 tight ends out there on those short yardage plays that just OSU had no chance of stopping. Just completely well coached, completely well prepared. He deserves a 12-pack. I thought Kyle Whittingham was the real deal, and he had his team ready to play without not only the starting quarterback, Colby, 3 of their best defensive players. Just lights out without a full deck.
Yeah, great call. He was brilliant. I had two set aside because I figured these were the two most obvious ones. You would take one, I would have the other one. Trey Rucker did everything he could to keep Oklahoma State in this game. I texted you at halftime, and because I couldn't get the box score to load in the stadium, I was like, "Is Trey Rucker Oklahoma State's leading receiver right now?" He had two catches at halftime. Trey Rucker did both interceptions and both good. One of them took points off the board at the end of the half. The other one preceded the 4th-and-1 punt from Mike Gundy, which is another reason I had a huge problem with it. Your safety goes out, makes a big time play. You've got a chance to establish serious early momentum in this game. 4th-and-1 at midfield. You give it back to them. Okay, trust your defense that they're not going to have to defend for 90 yards. A Utah team that wants to plod their way all the way down the field in this heat, they can defend half the field. That's okay. Punts it there on 4th-and-1. But Trey Rucker just did everything he could. He had to go back to the locker room at one point in the third quarter to get what I would assume was an IV. He was cramping. Again, it was, for those of you that weren't there, it was seriously, miserably hot in that stadium. The two interceptions, 14 tackles, again, just doing everything that he can to keep Oklahoma State in that game. And yesterday, I actually thought the front seven of Oklahoma State was kind of okay. Like you said, Utah just had a bunch of big personnel and big run packages that they were lining up in at the line of scrimmage and pushing Oklahoma State off the ball. Also, I kind of saw a lot of Dylan Smith being a cover safety who was kind of shading and waiting for what was happening on the back end. And then Rucker was crashing a ton yesterday. So it's not like all of those 14 tackles were 12 yards down the field like what we saw against Arkansas. He just did everything he could. So big time Yingling Toast of the Week to Trey Rucker, who had a great day.
Yeah, him and Singer were getting into it to the point the ref like gave him like the stop yelling, stop cussing probably. That Singer dude was mouthy.
I will say there was one play where Rucker absolutely should have been flagged after the play. It was down near the, what would that be, southwest corner of the field as Utah was driving. And Rucker like tackles a guy, knocks him out of bounds after what I'm pretty sure was a big play, like a 25-yard play on 3rd down or something. And Rucker stands up and stands over and puts his face mask on top of the dude's helmet and chirps at him. Probably should have gotten flagged there, didn't. And that's how it goes.
I think that was the play I'm talking about where him and Singer got into it. And the ref was like, no, stop.
Yeah, that's Carson, are you ready for me to pour one out? Because I've got a very big problem with something that happened at the end of yesterday's game.
Yeah, let's do that now.
Okay. I'm going to pour one out for college football concussion protocol. The staff that is in charge of making decisions to protect players from themselves, whether that be medical staff or coaching staff. I'm sorry. The player is always going to want to go back in the game. Always. Brennan Presley took that hit. We can argue about whether it was targeting, but he took the hit. He got up. He stumbled. He tried to gather his balance. He started to stumble again. And then Gavin Freeman and Rashad Owens propped him up, and I think probably kept him from stumbling and falling to the ground. Carson, we did an Oklahoma State, Missouri rewatch a couple of months ago, and we talked about how archaic the concussion rules were in 2007 when we watched Des Bryant just nearly die and come back to life twice because he was hit so hard in that game, and he was out for a play, maybe two plays. Brennan Presley took a shot, stumbled, and then had to be held up by his teammates. And he is back in the game a few plays later, ends up catching the 2-point conversion. You're down 11 points with 2.5 minutes to go, 2 minutes to go. He's out there catching the 2-point conversion. We just watched an ugly scene 11 days ago now on Monday Night Football with Tua Tagovailoa having what appeared to be another seizure on the field. Successive concussions like that are dangerous. You have to protect the player from himself. It was 22-11. There was 1:47 left whenever he caught that 2-point conversion. He's always going to want to go back in. And maybe he's fine, but the way he stumbled and had to be held up by teammates, I don't think you can defend putting him back in that game. I'll send it to you on that. These concussions, the player safety stuff, this is serious stuff. Brennan, like, that's a young man underneath that helmet, a good one. This is serious stuff. He needed to be protected from himself yesterday, and I didn't think he was.
Yeah, I mean, I think I tweeted right when it happened. Okay, now no Brennan for K-State. Disaster. Because to me, it looked like it was a concussion. Like the way he stumbled, to me, it looked clear that it was a concussion. Again, I'm not a doctor. They have team doctors. I thought it was a bad day all around. I thought it was a bad day for the medical staff to allow him to be back on the field. We've discussed the entire coaching staff to this point. Also, a bad day for the equipment staff. You tried out there in black helmets in 100-degree heat when it's field temp of 150 degrees. It was bad across the board, medical staff included. To what you're referencing, I thought Brennan had a concussion. That's you and I have watched football long enough to know that he probably shouldn't have been back out there. I'm curious to see if he plays against Kansas State. That would be even more damning, wouldn't it? If they rule him out with a concussion against Kansas State, even though he came back in the game on Saturday.
Yeah, no doubt it would. And so the Tua stuff, and it's just in my brain because it's what's happened recently. If you'll remember when he went down against the Bengals and had to be taken out in the ambulance to the hospital, the week prior to that, he took one against the Bills where he stumbled and then came back into that game, and then he played 4 days later. And that's what I'm talking about with these successive concussions. And the protocol is so much better than it used to be. But when there's an obvious failure, I think we have to point it out. And I thought yesterday was an obvious failure. Again, the player is always going to want to go back in, which is why there are people in place, there are personnel in place to make sure that that only happens if it's safe. The risk of a second concussion, I mean, thank God he didn't take another hit to the head with 1:47 left in that game, with everything, the scrums that we see happen down around the goal line. I'm so glad he didn't take another hit to the head, and we didn't have to find out what would have happened if there would have been another concussion built onto that one. So, yeah, certainly something to monitor going into the Kansas State game. I did watch his post-game press conference yesterday, or his media scrum, if you will. He looked good. He spoke very clearly. He gave great answers, quite frankly. It was an interview that you show to NFL scouts about taking responsibility for your own actions and not blaming anyone else. He put it on himself. He put it on the receivers. It was a good interview, but something to keep half an eye on, because I would imagine that they're at least monitoring him, and I hope that he's feeling good today.
All right, we'll get out of here after answering some questions here in the live chat. Send them in if you got them. I thought before we get to all those, there was one more quarterback decision that was recent that I just remembered. How about benching Spencer Sanders, 2020 Bedlam and Norman for Shane Illingworth? Like, Spencer has brought you to that point, and they bench him. Now, I think there was some friction there between him and Casey Dunn. Colby, maybe there was friction between Alan Bowman and Casey Dunn, because I listened to Robert Allen on the radio broadcast. He kept saying, like, Bowman's kind of in shock that he's standing over here. So I don't know if that was just, I don't know. Add that to the list of weird quarterback decisions. But good question here, or comment rather, from Nigel D. Kyle Whittingham matching Gundy with the substitution rule was funny AF. They really are the same coach. I did think that was like, life imitating art, imitating each other between Whittingham and Gundy.
Yeah, no doubt. It's the Spider-Man meme, pointing at each other. A lot of similarities between those two. Here's a good one from Double A. After seeing Rangel yesterday, do you think Flores will be first off the bench after Bowman, whether that be for a benching or an injury, whatever the case may be? Carson, I think the answer to that is yes. What say you?
You think they will play Flores over Rangel?
Yes, I think the depth chart after what we saw yesterday, and again, unfair situation for Garrett Rangel, but you're also in a situation where if Flores is your guy of the future, you've got to make sure he doesn't want to jump in the portal. He's got to know, okay, if that's what the other two are throwing out there and I'm not even getting a look, what am I doing here? So I think the depth chart now is Bowman, Flores, Rangel.
I mean, if they were worried about the portal, they wouldn't have played Rangel yesterday. I don't think they care. I don't think they're worried about Flores leaving. And to your point, like, Rangel has been put in some just horrific places. Marshall Scott put this in his 10 thoughts. His first career start came in Lawrence in 2022 against a Kansas team that was a win away from being bowl eligible for the first time since 2008. You think Lawrence was rocking that day? I think you and I watched that game together. Number 2 came in a monsoon against West Virginia. Number 3, Wisconsin in the Guaranteed Rate Bowl on a baseball field that no one could find solid footing on. Then he was thrown into the 3 quarterback rotation last year. So he's just, I do feel for him, Colby. He's been put in some really, really tough spots.
Yeah, he has. And the reality is sometimes things don't go your way. You don't get the breaks. And it seems like that has happened for Garrett Rangel. Somebody asks if we feel better after, let's see here. Are we feeling better about our chances at K-State after watching them at BYU? better, Carson? Yes, I'm feeling better after seeing them get drubbed by BYU. Now, you look at the box score of that game, a little bit fluky, punt return, defensive touchdown for BYU. Kansas State still pretty easily outgained them in total yards. So bad performance, and we've now seen two different Kansas States. We saw a bad Kansas State performance on the road at Tulane. We've now seen a bad Kansas State performance on the road at BYU. When they were home last Friday, 9 days ago against Arizona, they looked really good. So I feel better. I don't feel great.
Yeah, I mean, can OSU stop the run consistently against Kansas State? I know they did stop it pretty consistently against Utah, but they had some big runs late. Maybe that was due to being on the field the whole time. I don't know, but that they certainly pose a different threat
You want to
than
play?
most teams in the Big 12.
You want to play guess the spread?
Yeah. Golly. But to answer the original question, I do feel a lot better watching K-State get trucked in Provo because they looked pretty dang impressive just throttling Arizona at home the week before. So I will say Kansas State minus 4.5. I think it's gonna be a weird line.
You're very close. Kansas State is a 5.5 point favorite right now. I think that's a pretty appropriate line. I don't know, man. These are two teams. I think,
Weird line.
yeah, I think both have good head coaches. Both are coming off really bad performances this past weekend. It's in Manhattan. I mean, again, college football is random. The Big 12 is chaos. I don't know who's going to win that game. You default to Kansas State because they are at home, and Oklahoma State looked really bad Saturday. But would it shock me if Oklahoma State won the game? No, it wouldn't shock me. Last year, Oklahoma State was 11.5 point dogs to Kansas State at home because everything looked horrible, and then they trounced them. I I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. It's an 11 a.m. kick, which I don't love because I have to be at a birthday party for a 1-year-old at noon. So that's just a little bit unfortunate. It's for our very best friends. So happy to be there and support. But yeah, that's a tough scene. I'll have to watch the middle chunk of that game probably on replay.
It's 4.5 on DraftKings, so I was right if you checked that book.
Okay.
BWin has asked, BWin FYI has asked this multiple times. What's y'all's best assessment of why OSU is so lacking in NIL? 13 out of 14 is pretty wild to me, knowing the alumni that I know. I mean, it's concern. I mean, the reasons for that. I mean, I want to say, Colby, that, OSU just isn't a huge fan base, but you look around the Big 12, there's some very similar sized fan bases. To me, it just kind of feels like OSU is doing what they can with the best they can with what they got. They're never going to be Texas A&M, just chock full of money and mega boosters. OSU has some big time boosters, just not nearly as many of them as other schools. I guess that would be my best explanation for that. And I just think they're just getting started as well. I think it should grow over time, and they're trying to do all the things they can.
Yeah, I don't have a huge answer to that question. And I mean, maybe that's why you had a meeting where somebody was being innovative and thought about the QR codes. And they're not on the helmets, but they are everywhere else. I mean, they're on the equipment truck driving down the highway whenever we're going to a road game. On the door there's a huge QR code, so when they stop to get gas or if you're sitting in traffic you can scan it. Like, they've got it everywhere. They're doing what they can. It obviously, the big money is going to come from the big donors, but I mean, it's the everyman. It's those of us in Boone Pickett Stadium. It's those of us watching at home that all have to give $10 here, $20 there, $50 there. It's very much a crowd-funded system right now. I wouldn't be shocked if ticket prices go up, kind of like what Tennessee did. You juke the ticket prices 10%, so you get some NIL, you get better football, you keep more people in the stadium. It's tough to have to pay more, but I mean, college football is crowdfunded right now. So, yeah, 13 out of 14 is concerning, but I at least feel confident that they're being innovative there and that they're doing everything they can to bring that up.
Let's see here. What would you do moving forward, Colby? Like, you asked me, would Rangel be the backup? I think he would, but I mean, I look at the fact is their best chance to win this year is with Alan Bowman, and you can't pull the plug the way they did. They have to scheme better to get open receivers. I think that's hurting Alan Bowman as much as anything. That's hurting the running game as much as anything. When you're running predictable pass plays that are covered up 10, 15 yards down the field, you're just not going to get anything going. So, any more questions you want to answer before we get out of here? I probably need to wrap it up here soon.
Yeah, just one from Nigel. Can we accurately get the ball to our wide receivers over these next few weeks? The core's great. When they did get open, the ball was barely fed to them accurately. Again, and I just briefly threw this in earlier because I do think most of the blame falls on the coaches. But I do think Alan Bowman played poorly yesterday. The moments that he had open receivers, I mean, he threw some at the feet. Again, he was rushing throws early in the game. In the second quarter, there was a second down in the red zone where he took the snap and he saw that Utah was blitzing and just got rid of it. He floated it out to Owens. Owens hadn't even, he barely had broken into his route at that point. It like hit off his side of his arm. Very next play, he predetermined that he was going to go to Brennan. That was nearly a pick six. I think he could have had Freeman or Owens for a touchdown on that play based on what I saw. Owens was, after the play was jumping up and down. It looked like he was wide open on the post. So I don't think Bowman was great, and those things matter in the margins along the way. I still think most of the responsibility lies on the staff. I would run Bowman out next week. That's where your cohesion is with the receivers when things are going well. And we know that when you do have a running game, Bowman can be fine. He can be good enough to win you football games. He was good enough to get him the Big 12 championship game last year with OU and Texas in the conference. So can he be good enough to get him the Big 12 championship game this year? Yes, but the yes has a big caveat, and the caveat is only if the running game gets going, and that falls on the coaching staff.
Absolutely. For me, it's we've seen this happen many, many times in the last 5, 6 years where it looks like the season's lost. They have no answers, fire everyone, and they usually turn it around. And again, you played the best team in the conference, albeit with their backup quarterback. If you're just, not a complete disaster on offense, you're right there in that football game. As it was, they got dominated. For me, you have to figure out a way to run the football with any semblance of a pull. I'm not asking for a semblance of success. I'm asking for a semblance of a pulse, because we've seen that Alan Bowman's capable of throwing your way to wins. And so I don't know, Colby. It's rough. They are 3-1. They should be 2-2. So I guess that's the positive, but I don't know. We shall see. If they go beat K-State, Colby, you just look at their schedule, like that sets up really well the rest of the way. So go win next week, and it's a whole new ball game.
Yep. I know you need to get out of here, but we've had a couple of questions about the national scene, what we saw in Norman last night, what we saw in Boulder last night, which I was watching live. I had a buddy at that game who I was texting. He was texting me asking if it was a fumble because there's 5,000 people on the field. Mayhem, good for Colorado. That was epic. What'd you think about what you saw nationally yesterday?
I mean, whose offense is worse, OSU's or Oklahoma's? I mean, I guess I should say, who is worse at running the football, Oklahoma or Oklahoma State?
Yes, both. All of the above. Yeah.
Hey, in Oklahoma, I know by choice, or by not by choice, but they had to. They went to a freshman quarterback who gave them a little bit of a spark. I mean,
good.
People acting like Zane Flores just, you can't even go to the guy. I don't believe that. We know what Garrett Rangel is at this point. So if they're having, and plus Flores can move a little bit, he can run a little bit, just like Rangel can. So I think you got to try that in Manhattan if things are going off the rails again.
Yeah, no doubt. I said last night, and I still feel this way today, I am rooting for Tennessee to win the Natty because we needed that result in Norman last night so bad. I mean, if OU would have pulled off that upset in their first game in the SEC after what we witnessed in Stillwater, Carson, we would have had to move. I wouldn't have been able to live in this state if they would have won that game last night after what took place in Stillwater. So I am still Oklahoma State all the way. Like, Oklahoma State's proven probably not a national championship caliber team. Tennessee, you just never know. So I'm on the Vols the rest of the way for coming through for me last night in Norman.
Why do you want Tennessee to win the national championship? I get winning in Norman, but
because they did a solid for me last night. They did a solid for me. And there's nobody else up there that I want to root for. I don't want to root for Texas or Georgia or Alabama. I don't want to root for any of those schools. So why not root for the school that did me a solid yesterday?
Boy, am I glad we don't play Texas anymore. They look really good.
Yeah, dude, they look so good. And that's with Arch or with Quinn. It doesn't matter who they've got. They look good.
Yep. Oh, hello, Dare.
Hey, can you say go pokes in the microphone? Oh, good stuff. Yeah, good deal. Did you see what happened in Boulder last night, by the way?
I didn't. I heard about it.
Epic. You got to go back and watch it. And Travis Hunter played like 120 snaps or something, and he was the guy who dislodged the ball 6 inches short of the goal line in overtime for them to win. epic throw by Shadur, epic catch in the end zone on the Hail Mary. After a guy dropped one the previous play, the Hail Mary was completed.
Yeah.
Open receiver at the 2-yard line dropped one the previous play. It was pretty sweet. So, any parting thoughts, or did you get it all out?
That's it for me. We'll do this again. Get ready for K-State. Get that preview ready, and it's gonna be an interesting ride the rest of the way. That's for sure.
Doubt. No doubt. We'll reconvene later in the week. Appreciate everyone joining us on the YouTube. We love all the interaction, and we'll try to do some more of these. I think we're going to try to do mostly YouTube live post games throughout the conference season, assuming that scheduling and everything aligns. So appreciate everyone for joining us.